Okay, now we're on back on the inside. Now I have to use a flashlight here because we're in a dark corner of my bedroom. But I wanted to show you the setup. Let's see if I can do this and film at the same time. Okay, watch the light. Here comes the lines coming in from the outside of the solar panel. Now those go into a 30 watt fuse, or I'm sorry, a 30 amp fuse, which conveniently I had an extra car audio line laying around, which worked out great. Now those both combine into a much thicker gauged wire to carry the voltage through. And those run down into this cheap Chinese 400 watt grid tie inverter. And then from there, I run a wire from there over to this side. You can see that. Wish I could pull this out for you, but it's kind of a pain in the ass. Is a cheap Chinese 250 watt grid tie inverter. Now I've got a total of 250 watts coming in, and I'll explain that here. And then from the 250 watt grid tie inverter runs up to my cheap Northern Tools Sunforce charge controller, which I believe is a PWM, which I'm almost certain it's PWM. It's definitely not MPPT, which I regret not getting one of those to begin with. But doing it that way, I find, now most people say, well, you only need to run the one grid tie inverter, it's pointless to chain the other one on because you don't have that much wattage going in. And I've only got 250 watts on the roof. I should be able to get by with the 250 watt grid tie inverter. Well, you would think. But in my experience, when I have just one of these hooked up, it won't get as much. Like when my solar system was a little bit, so I think I had like 100 watts, or no, I had 150 watts. And if I just hooked up one of them, it didn't matter which one, they both do about the same. I was only getting about 85 watts. Now when I hook up both of them, like I have, I see a 20 to 30 watt increase in power. So they don't really utilize everything that you feed them, and that's why I like to run them in a chain like that. Now the other reason why I have a big 450 watt inverter is because, of course, I'll be adding on. Okay, for my batteries, I have two 6-volt golf cart batteries, which seem to be highly recommended, and I have had a lot of luck with them. I've had them for a couple of years, never have a problem. Now I only use those for backup when the power goes out, so that's the only reason why I only have two of them. Now if I was trying to go off-grid or whatever, of course you'd want more. You'd want to have at least 6. 6 to 8. If you wanted to run, like my house, we use 1500 kilowatts a month, and we pay like 10.64 cents per kilowatt. So if you really wanted to go off-grid without losing any of your luxuries, which I'll go over that too, I'll show you all the appliances in my house and everything that I run, you would probably want more like a 12 to 16 battery bank using these batteries, and that's a lot of amp hours. But when you start thinking about it, unless you want to cut your luxuries back, if you want a smaller refrigerator, a smaller AC unit or whatever, I mean, you could do that and run on fewer, you use less power and be able to run a smaller system. But my eventual goal is to be independent. Matter of fact, the whole reason why I'm doing this channel is because I believe that every man has a right to live free. I don't think people should have to go to work for somebody else to make their money. I don't think that we should have to be reliant on another man for our survival. And I still believe that you can do that in this day and age. There's a lot of, I watch a lot of the off-grid people because that's where I get a lot of my ideas, and they live great, and you know, that's a great way to do it, and that's a great way to live free. But I never plan on being off the grid. I live in a small town. Uh, if shit were to hit the fan, it's different. Smaller towns will tend to band together. Smaller towns will tend to look for leadership, as opposed to in the larger cities, where it seems to be more of a cutthroat attitude. If something big were to happen, well, then you're looking at riots in the streets and stuff like that. But in a town like mine, you don't really, you've got more time to deal. The only thing you got to worry about around here is military moving in, or somebody moving in. Our local police and our local just the people in general aren't as, I don't know, I don't know how to explain it, uptight. We do have uptight people, but it seems like in bigger cities you have more of a tendency to riot and loot and steal when big things happen. And I think it's just because there's just so many people there. And in a town like this, it's not as a timely concern. So if the shit were to hit the fan around here, I might have a couple of days to a couple of weeks to pack up and move out. There's very, very few scenarios where I would have to jump in the bug out vehicle and go like right now, So I feel pretty good about living in a smaller city. I think there's about 13 to 16,000 people in this town. Anyway, back to the system. When I originally started this system, I made a few mistakes, but that was just because I was starting. The one thing I wished I would have done differently was this inverter. And of course, it's one of those things where, I looked at it, I was like, man, that thing is massive. I ought to be able to run anything I want to on that. And it is. It's a massive 3,000 watt Wagentech inverter. And you can see on the side, those are the fuse panels for the side. There's a 40 watt fuse in every one of those. I mean, this thing is a honking piece of machine. You could do a lot with this. The problem with it is it's not true sine, it's modified sine. So I've got all this power and I can't really run any of my big appliances with it. I can't run a refrigerator with it. You could if you wanted to, but you're gonna, from my experience, it only provides about half the cooling efficiency, so it runs a lot longer, and plus, from what I understand, it'll damage the compressor over time. But in an emergency, you could do it. I paid probably about $560 for this inverter, and now if I were to get a true sine wave inverter, I think it's you don't want there's one of them that's not actually a true sine wave inverter, but you want the one that just says sine wave inverter or true sine wave inverter, because one of them says pure or something like that, but one of them's not actually what you want to run your compressors and stuff like that. The microwave, I can't run the microwave on this. It only puts out about half the power, so it takes twice as long to cook something in a microwave running on this, and plus I also understand that can actually damage your microwave also. So I would have rather, in hindsight, it would have been a lot better to get a true sine wave inverter even at less wattage. I think at $500 you can probably get a 1500 watt true sine wave inverter right now. I'm pretty sure is about the going rate. And I should have just done that, because then I could have utilized the power. I could have run my microwave. My microwave's 1,000 watts. I could have run my microwave off of it. I've got it's not necessarily a mini fridge, but it's more like a hotel fridge. It's larger than the ones that you see normally that the college students have and stuff like that. I would have been able to run that off of it, but I've got this now, I guess. So that's my only regret, is not getting a true sine wave inverter.